of the big stories we're tracking for you this Tuesday. Creditors and unions are expected to make a landmark vote for a new restructured SAA today. This follows intense negotiations, with some unions accepting voluntary severance packages for SAA employees. Now, the Department of Public Enterprises has called on unions and creditors to vote in favor of a business rescue plan for SAA, from which a new airline will emerge. To unpack all of the various issues related to the story, we're joined now by aviation expert, pilot Desmond Latham. He joins us via our Skype line in Johannesburg. We're also joined by the DA's Khalid Kachalia, who has written an open letter to all SAA creditors asking them to reject the business rescue plan. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM report. Desmond, I want to start with you. I mean, there's a lot at stake here this morning, not least of which, if the vote does not carry, that will force government to borrow at a higher interest rate. Creditors owed some 27 million rand by SAA. But in principle, Desmond, what are your beliefs about this moment that we are in yet again with SAA, and how today's vote should go?
Well, I mean, SAA owes 27 billion rand plus, and it's basically bankrupt. So what has happened is that it's been run into the ground for a decade, and the high skills there are now facing an existential crisis called COVID-19. World transport has come to a stop, basically. Especially aviation, is down 92%, the numbers in Africa, passenger transport, for example. So trying to rejig an airline in the middle of a crisis like this, when it was already run so badly by the owners, the government, and also the management team, and not to mention the board, is really indicates just where we are politically, I think. But the big thing is there are latent skills in this airline, and it is an important factor about our future. We need airlines to operate, especially across SADC and across Africa. And I think this is a point at which SAA could work with new owners and look more further afield. We're still living in the colonial boundaries of the past, and of course airlines fly across them in minutes. And so we need a new kind of goal, a new vision. And there just is no vision about what to do about innovation in science and aviation. So without that, just pouring money down the dark hole called SAA, however it's going to be rejigged in the future, is unsustainable, and it just is actually, it sounds like lunatics, maniac, are making decisions, because it's madness is doing the same thing over and over again with the same result and expecting different results. And so we need a real change, and I just fear that we're not going to get it.
Khalid Kachalia, I want to bring you in here, and that is the big issue here today, isn't it? Is that, as Des describes it, we've been pouring millions upon millions of rands down the dark hole called SAA over the past few years. If this vote today goes the way that you want it, and the business rescue plan is indeed rejected, also far-reaching consequences there, not least of which a massive impact on severance packages. Tell us why you want the vote to be rejected today.
Look, it's clear, as Mr. Latham has said, that SAA has for the past God knows how long been utterly bankrupt, and the taxpayer has bailed this entity out to the tune of billions. That is unacceptable, and we've now hit a brick wall, if you like. But this vote is a little bit of a red herring, because whichever way this vote goes, there is no money. And that's the point. Tito Mboweni and National Treasury have said there is no money. So if the vote goes one way and everyone approves it, and the secured creditors vote in favor of it, which they shouldn't have a vote anyway, because they secured creditors, they've lent recklessly, and now they want to push the vote in a particular direction. But if you approve this, you'll get hopefully some funding for a pie in the sky project to continue doing the same madness in a different way, and in the hope that debts will be paid and severance packages will be paid along the way. If you vote against, there's the question of the outstanding debt, the severance packages, and the retention of 1,000 jobs, which is part of the new package. But the point is, as I've said, there is no money. Now, what do you do when there's no money? You've got DPE and Praveen Gordhan pitted against Finance and Tito Mboweni. And Finance says there is no money. So there's a showdown here. at the OK Corral, as it were. And what we have is then a political problem which comes about. It goes to cabinet. If cabinet says we are now going to pass this BRP plan because they voted for it and there's no money, then cabinet will try and make the money available. If cabinet makes that money available, it will be the second or third time ever in the history of this country that they've done so in this manner. The first was for the arms deal, and the second was for the bailout of the student aid scheme. Since 1994, it's only happened twice. If it happens this time, it will be folly again. And as I say, the battle lines have been drawn.
What's your response to that, Desmond? I mean, no matter which way the vote goes, as Khalid describes it, we're still stuck between this space in a rock and a hard place. You know, even if the BRP is passed today.
Well, I mean, it's 100% correct because, I mean, you've got to look at this in the broad scale of things. We've had a business rescue plan process and that's been undergoing since late last year, really, and the beginning of this year. We've had international experts hired at really high cost, and we're paying them on a daily basis, 18,000, 20,000 rand probably. And there's the COVID threat that we face is a long-term threat. So all aviation around the world is being hammered. Lufthansa has got a $10 billion bailout, but Lufthansa was making money before it got the bailout. SAA cannot entertain the idea that it's just going to, keep going to get the cash for operations. However, I must stress that aviation is part of science and innovation. So what we're doing is we've seen government, and for the last basically 5 or 6 years, it's been operating tactically and not strategically. So it's been operating on a day-to-day and a month-by-month and a quarter-by-quarter basis and trying to squeeze it's as much out of this politically as possible. And we have no strategy. And you can see this very clearly. If we had a strategy, a long-term strategy, 10, 15 years, which we should with aviation, we wouldn't be in this hole. But of course, government has been riven by the fact that the ANC split in two since Zuma departed. We have issues inside all boardrooms, all state-owned entities have been riven by this. By the way, I was at Government Communication Information Service for a year. I was a consultant. I was hired as chief director in the information service. I watched at meetings as Zuma's people fought Ramaphosa's people instead of us dealing with issues. I watched Eskom come and give us briefings about nuclear on the day that government said it would not do nuclear. I mean, we are living tactically here on everything. SAA is just part of the big picture. And I think that the average citizen has to really be aware that we need aviation in Africa. And this is a point at which we could drive a kind of strategic goal. But instead, what we have ourselves in our little holes here, trying to debate about whether we're going to get 1,000 extra jobs and so on. This is no way to run an innovation for aviation. Yeah.
It sounds like what both of you are saying is even if the vote goes one way or the other, we're still stuck in a really awful position with SAA. I'm just reading some of the information on, the last time SAA made a profit was in 2011. As you say, Desmond, this cannot come at a worse time. Airlines on the continent have lost 92% of revenue. That's besides the hole, as you say, SAA has already been in. Khalid, whatever happens today, whichever way the vote goes, let's say that the plan is adopted today. What are the plans in place to ensure that this will not be the SAA that has been this dark hole? What will this new SAA, according to your understanding, look like?
Well, that's the point. We don't know. We're being dangled some idea that there are investors, but we don't know who these investors are. We don't even know if they're a reality. In the current environment, I don't see any investors coming forward. COVID has ravaged the industry more than anything else, and investors coming into Africa to rescue a failed project on the basis of international ones coming in whose investment is capped at 25%, who won't have a meaningful say in the running of a company. Well, I don't know. But in any event, if by some miracle there are some investors and Treasury by some folly is forced to put some money into this, then we have a situation where we are investing in a new airline. Yes, there are skills there, but the point is that when the aviation industry gets back on its feet post-COVID, the private sector will be able to absorb many of these things, many of these skills. That's the way it works. I mean, you can't say to as you've done in the past, to say, let's continue to bail out this folly on the basis of some state-owned vanity project. And now we're going forward and saying, oh, no. We've got some, as I say in my letter, some mad uncle who's going to give you some money, but the big banks and so on will continue to lend recklessly against this. And why would they do so? Because government guarantees their money. And who is government guaranteeing the money from? Me and you, the taxpayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Taxpayers, the ones ultimately footing the bill. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time joining us there to unpack what really is an incredibly difficult story. It doesn't seem there are winners either way, whichever way the vote does go today. But aviation expert and pilot Desmond Latham, thanks very much for your time